I was doing a consultation in Dallas, Texas. I had lived there for 6 years, and this was one of my trips back. Fun to be in the old stomping grounds. I had rented a small SUV and was headed to this event. And I wasn't rushed, but I was a little bit late. I was driving through the northern part sort of Dallas, and it had begun to rain just a few minutes earlier. In Dallas, Texas, when it rains, especially if it hasn't for a while, the drops sit on the dust and the oil and other things that are on the road. And for a few minutes, you have a very slippery surface before they sort of settle into the blacktop or the concrete wherever you're driving. And so I was driving through that kind of situation as far as the driving conditions. And I came to an intersection, the light turned yellow, and I thought, I can make it. And I decided to go through. A minivan coming in the other direction from the left turn lane decided the same thing, that they would try to make their left turn through the yellow before it turned red. Well, you can hear what's coming. In a flash, I saw before me a minivan with two very young faces in the side windows and my car coming at them through the yellow, sliding across as I braked this slippery surface. And as my car, I just realized I am going to T-bone these people. And it was though a voice came to my head and said, turn and accelerate. I'm like, what? Everything inside me wanted to break, right? You want to stop, but you realize it's not going to work. In that moment, and again, these things happen all in a microsecond. In that moment, I realized if I continue to just hold on to the brake, my car will just slide in and I will T-bone this minivan. And so I turned the wheel hard left and I slammed on the gas. And the car took this turn and it pulled, because of the four-wheel drive, it pulled me across in front of the minivan just as it passed me. I mean, it was just, again, it felt like 2 feet apart. And my car started to pass them. And then I realized in a second flash that I'm in danger once again. I'm out of that danger, but now I'm going into the oncoming lane and I'm in the cross lane. So the same thing said, accelerate and turn again. And I turned right, the other way around, slammed on the gas and came around. The whole thing was maybe 2 seconds, and it was one of these, around, and then I straightened out, and I pulled over. I just had to pull over. I pulled over onto the shoulder, and I remember doing this. I went through these emotions all just hitting me. I had this 2-second adrenaline rush and an instinct, whatever you want to call it, that allowed me to do the counterintuitive move around that car, around that van, and avoid T-boning what were likely a couple young kids. And who knows what would have happened. And all this emotion just caught up with me. And I had to just settle down before I could drive any further. Now, I could use that story in a lot of ways. I want to talk to you about being a storytelling leader. But you feel emotion in a story like that. You have memories of your own challenges, maybe driving in a story like that. And I could draw principles from it: foolishness, risk, listening to an inner voice. There's different things, right? But a story captures us. And we all love stories and know stories, regardless of what kind they are. And I want to talk to you about how a leader can use stories, especially some very important stories, to shape and build and guide a team or an organization. Because I think great leaders tell life-changing stories that really impact people and help them to do certain things or to embrace certain values or whatever. So we're going to talk about 4 kinds. I'm going to touch one today, and then we're going to look at 3 others. But the first one is campfire stories. Then we'll talk about iconic stories that capture the organization for what it is, vision stories, and then personal stories. And then to wrap things up, I'll talk about the components and key things about telling a story that'll help you shape them when you use them with your folks. So real quickly, the campfire story is that remember when story. It's the thing when we're standing around a circle with a cup of coffee and people go, oh, do you remember 10 years ago in the company when? Or you remember our church when we first started to do this? Or remember when, we just had this entrepreneurial idea in our garage, kind of thing. The campfire stories are great because they draw people in to the long-term story of the organization. I remember an organization I joined, we went around and did this, and everybody named when they'd come into the sort of the room of the organization. Oh, a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Some had been at the beginning, like 40 years ago. And a couple of them started telling stories, and they told a story about how they all lined up at a bank to take out loans to help launch this organization. And they were just, late teens, early 20s. They had this vision, and they told their friends, and everybody lined up at the bank to take out $500, $1,000, $1,500, throw it all in a pile, and help launch this organization. And they talked about how the line came out of the building and went down the street, and people drove by like, what's going on? As they told this story, I really felt it. I could see it. I could see these people lined up, and I could see, wow, that's how this got started. It was crazy. So that's a campfire kind of story, a remember when story, and they're fun to tell. Sometimes they're sad. A lot of times they bring a smile to people's face. But here's some things they do, and then we'll wrap with this. First of all, they honor long-term people. They allow the long-term players to really say, hey, I got some stories to tell you about things through the years, and they're just great to hear. They connect, secondly, new people. I find myself in the story. I build off their story. And so that kind of campfire story really helped me to feel like, wow, I'm joining something that's been going, something that transcends me in my time. Third, they create a sense of family or community or connection. Fourth, they highlight sacrifices people made to get to where we are today. And it makes you really feel, wow, some folks really, really paid dues so that I could be part of this today. Fifthly, they set context. They help you understand, who we are, where we are, and why we've been doing what we've been doing for a while. And finally, they highlight transcendent values, things that were true then and are still true now. So campfire stories are important, and if used well, they can really bring an organization together and help you really connect. We'll be talking about those other types of stories in our sessions to come.